All right, back again, November 16th. Welcome to Coaches Podium Instructor Conference powered by Hockey Without Borders and Coaches Clinic. Today, I said I wouldn't say your family name, but yeah, Coach TJ, how's it going? Thank you for being here with us.
Good, John. Thanks for having me. It's Manus Thursky for all those wondering how to say it.
Thank you. So please tell our audience where we see the jerseys behind you. Like, where do you coach? What's your role right now? Maybe a little bit of history, what you did in the past in the hockey world.
Sure. So right now I'm an assistant coach with the Union College men's hockey team, which is a Division I program in the NCAA. We play in the ECAC, and that's our conference. And I'm just in my first season here. Prior to that, I spent 9 years at a Division III school just outside of Boston called Curry College, where I was the head coach. And then prior to that, I was at Fredonia State and Canisius College. So this is my 15th year coaching in different capacities in the NCAA. And it's been terrific. I've managed to find a way to not work for a living. So
yeah, that's the key, man. You figured it out. What I'm curious, because we didn't know each other before this. What prompted you to actually accept the invitation to come and talk with us today?
Well, for one, I really enjoy discussing topics surrounding hockey and development and leadership and coaching and all these things, and I like to share and to give back as much as I can and learn from others. So that's the first thing. I participate in events like this as a viewer, and when given the option to present, I'm honored to be asked and happy to oblige whenever I can. I guess addition to that is I'm familiar with Hockey Without Borders a little bit. Somebody that I know is coached. I've been on some trips with Hockey Without Borders, and I just love the whole idea of it, the mission, spreading the game, growing the game, taking it to different parts of the world, the sense of adventure that comes with it. And that's something that I really enjoy about the game, is the places I've had the opportunity to go and experience around the world that otherwise I would have never been to. So it just sort of hits home for me in a few different levels. And I was excited to be asked.
Thank you. And what are the subjects you're going to tackle today?
I'm going to talk about holistic player development, and this is a topic that I appreciate the opportunity to speak on because I'm in the weeds with it every day with our players, and so in preparing for this, to organize my thoughts and to put it down in hopefully a coherent way that people can take and then apply whatever it is that sticks for them in their setting. Hopefully it can help them create a better experience for their athletes. Then that's terrific. And I'm certainly far from the expert in this topic, but I have been working at it very hard for 15 years. And I have learned some things that have helped me, that work for me in my settings. And, I believe they would work in any setting. Because we're coaching humans regardless of age, right? Whether it's grassroots to professional, regardless of skill level, gender, doesn't matter. We're all humans first. So the approach, I believe, is universal.
Very cool. I'm excited to hear that. Thank you. You now have the floor. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, John. Okay. So first I will do the share screen action here. So as I mentioned, holistic player development is the topic. And when we think about holistic player development and looking at it this way, it means that we're viewing the player or the person as a whole being, right? We're not only thinking about developing their physical and technical abilities, but we're also taking the time to consider things like their psychological needs, mental health, social, emotional, and cultural aspects too, especially if any of the coaches are going to be involved with Hockey Without Borders and are going to go to different areas of the world, understanding some of the influences that come from the cultures that they are working with. These people will play a role for sure. And As I've said, on my journey, I've spent 15 years at the collegiate level working on this, and I've had the chance to learn from a lot of smart and experienced people. And my intention here is to share what I've learned and what's worked for me, and hope that I can share it with you folks, and then you can take it and add to this collective body of knowledge, and we can create better experiences in the development process for our athletes. So the first question for me that I'd like to answer is, like, why are we doing this? Because, to be honest with you, this approach takes a lot of time and effort and care, and there's a lot of other things we can be spending our time on that may result in more immediate results, quite frankly. But over the long term, this approach, in my opinion, is the right way and the best way to achieve the results you're looking for. So for me, these are sort of my goals of player development. Number one is to expedite the growth of our players. We want to pull out their best as fast as possible. In college, right? So 4 years I have with a player at best, and it's not a lot of time. We want to get the most out of them as soon as possible. And for us, we have players that would like to move on and play professional hockey. So that's a big thing. We want to expedite their growth. We want to improve team performance too, right? I mean, it doesn't matter the age or the level you coach. There likely is a scoreboard. And we would like to win the games, and I don't think that you have to choose development or winning over the other. I think that you can do both. And in fact, development of your players on an individual basis is actually a strategy to win. And that's another reason why we do it. We would like to win and be successful. And then ultimately build life and character skills so that our players move on and they're going to be great citizens in their communities, and husbands and wives, and fathers and moms, and all those things contributing to their communities and are successful people for the rest of their lives. So those are the why for me, like the reason why we're going to go through all of this effort and time to develop a holistic player development plan. So for me, there is a framework that I sort of work under when trying to build a development plan. And the first thing is that it starts with considering the environment. And the coach is responsible for creating the environment and shaping this environment so that it is a place that's conducive to development. And if you think about it in terms of user experience, sometimes we think about user experience maybe in gaming or on a website, or even in a store, the flow of the traffic, or at an amusement park, how they always funnel you through the gift shop on the way out. Well, if you can kind of take that idea of user experience and think about the athletes in your organization, and what does it feel like for them to be on your team? What are those daily interactions? What are those patterns of behavior that are happening now? And to even think about the flow of when they walk in the room, the dressing room, what happens, and we're walking the rink, and these different things all influence an environment. And ultimately, we want to be inspiring performance. So is your environment one that's doing that, that's creating the opportunity for this inspired intrinsic performance? You think about it this way, the tugboat versus a flock of birds. And Seth Godin has a daily email, and a very relevant one came in this morning. I'd never heard this before, but he was relating tugboats and a flock of birds to leadership. He said that tugboats don't usually tug. That's because pushing is more mechanically efficient than pulling. When we pull, there's tension and slack in the ropes, and the attachment between the puller and the push keeps changing. So if we're pulling or pushing in our environment, there's tension involved, and it's not exactly inspiring. Whereas a flock of birds, you have one bird at the head of the flock can lead 100 others if those birds are enrolled in the journey. Right, that's the choice. That's the point here, that your athletes need to enroll and freely choose. So you want to have an environment where they're able to do that. They're freely choosing, they're inspired to perform and to develop, and they're motivated in that way, because that single bird at the front of the flock couldn't push or pull any one of those birds, but they could lead 100. So these are some of the ideas about the environment and how we want to be consciously creating our environment, because you have an environment, a culture, no matter what. It's either being created intentionally or it's just happening. So let's be intentional about it. So after you think about the environment, there's sort of 4 areas that I look at. First, person before the player, right? Like, we are dealing with people first. They're not chess pieces, and they are subjects, not objects. And if it's person before the player, we want a personalized experience as much as possible. And we're going to get into that with player development plans. But personalized is the way it needs to be, because if you think about it, if you have kids or you have siblings, and you'll know that a strategy for one child may not work for another child, and it's because everybody is different, and we cannot have a cookie cutter approach if we want to maximize our impact here. And again, this takes time and effort and care, but it's also well worth it. Challenge and support. So this is sort of like the environment, but this is the coach's job. We want to appropriately challenge and support the people in our program, on our team, and striking the right balance at the right time. And we'll get into that a little bit here. And then thinking yourself as the coach as really the guide, right? We want to create an experience where it's encouraging autonomy and ownership of the players, so they are taking responsibility for their growth. And our job as the coach is to guide them through that process. So, person before the player. I think this is a relevant time to discuss a little bit about mental health, because when we think about performance, when you're having any issues with your physical or mental health, it's very difficult, likely impossible, to perform optimally, to develop optimally. And that's something that we understand when it's a bone or an injury, a physical injury, because we can see it, it's a lot easier to understand. When it comes to mental wellness challenges, it's a little harder to understand. But when we use this perspective of putting the person before the player and thinking of them as a human being, and that the mind and body are connected, this is the holistic nature of it, that it's imperative that we consider this. And the first thing to do is to understand it. And this really hit home for me a few years ago when I started asking questions in player development meetings about this. And I asked directly the question to every player: are you experiencing any challenges in your personal life? And I asked them, are you experiencing any challenges with mental health? And I was actually blown away at how freely they shared and how much information I got. And I learned a lot about my players and the team. But I was taken aback. I was very surprised at the number of these athletes that express themselves as having anxiety. And, from the outside looking in, I'm thinking these are 19 to 24-year-old guys that, by all accounts, are living a pretty good life. They're going to school, they're playing hockey, they're confident, they got a lot of things going, and relative to a lot of situations, their future seems pretty bright. And yet they're still struggling with anxiety and some other issues. So first, understand that this is happening on your team. It just is. So let's not hide from it. Let's face it, and let's help. And way we can do that is by normalizing it. So just asking the questions, talking about it, potentially even sharing some of your own struggles at times. And I think everybody goes through ups and downs a little bit with their mental health, whether they have anxiety or not, or whether they have other issues or not. There are stretches and stressful times. Opening up about that can open the door to some meaningful conversation. And then also understanding that mental skills can always improve. We prescribe strength and conditioning programs to people that are already really fit, right? So we can always think about improving the mental health, mental skills for our people. And the one point I would also make about this is to remember to assume positive intent. A lot of times things happen in our environment where a player maybe is behaving a little bit differently or not in a way that you'd like, whether that be in performance in a game or in practice, or it could be body language, who knows? It could be any host of things. But if you know your players and you notice that it's something seems off, rather than sometimes there's a rush to blame somebody or accuse them of not working hard, for example. Well, I don't think anybody shows up saying, I'm not going to work hard. And if it appears as though they're not working hard, there may be a reason. So let's start by considering what are some of those reasons. Assume positive intent, ask questions, and often they will share and you'll find out that there is something going on, and then you can support them and find the right way. And again, if you think about the children, how one strategy for another, one won't work for another, also think about how would you want your child to be treated in the coaching environment. And that is a way that we want to approach our athletes. So if it is person before the player, then it's also personalized. We want to have a personalized approach to how we develop. So this quote here, this is actually a picture of part of the lounge in our dressing room. So strength of the pack is the wolf. Strength of the wolf is the pack. And that's a theme throughout our program. What that speaks to is that there is an I in team. A whole bunch of individuals. And as one individual improves, that improves the strength of the pack, right? And if we're considering a human as being mind and body in one whole being, while a team is its own being too, and we're all one. And as one person improves, our team will improve. So the strength of the pack is the wolf. And so if there is an I in team, like I'm saying, we're making the choice to recognize that we all have different strengths, weaknesses, impacts, cultural impacts, goals, values, all these things that impact the way that we show up to the rink or the gym or whatever sport you are, how we express ourselves as a player, and what our unique fingerprint as a human, as a player is. And if we want to affect maximum positive impact on our players, a personalized approach is what's going to get it done. And a few examples I can give you is, I had a player one time who was a goal scorer, who wasn't scoring goals, but just certainly had the capability of producing more offense. And they were struggling in some areas of their game. Wall play, getting pucks out of the zone. And I was really coaching this player. I was showing video, I was critiquing, I was doing all these things to try and help them in these areas that he was deficient, and it wasn't working. So we took a drastically different approach. Started just positively reinforcing the good things and showed video of the good things. And all of a sudden this player took off, started scoring goals, and went from 1 goal in their second season to 17 goals in their second season, which was good for top couple in the country at that time. So all we did was we just took that approach, positively reinforcing. And you know what? Those things that we were worried about earlier got better too, because as their confidence improved and the rest of his game improved, the whole thing improved. I had another player who transferred into our school and had, sort of less than stellar results where he came from. He came to our team and was unbelievable and literally scored a goal almost every game we played. And I asked him one time, what was the difference? And he just said, well, you talked to me. So here's a player who just needed to be talked to, right? So that speaks to the social and emotional side of things. It had nothing to do with his wrist shot or his skating or his strength and conditioning. This was totally, something else, that social and emotional realm that unlocked that player's development. And the last one I'll mention is we had a player who had all the skill set and wondering, why is this player? He's strong, he's fast, he's skilled. He's not producing the way he'd like. So we watched his game, and this one was a tactical adjustment. Well, he was shooting from outside of the dots all the time, and he had opportunities to get closer to the net, to get into a better shooting area. And when we made that adjustment, things unlocked for him, and his performance improved and his results improved. And again, so 3 different players, 3 different scenarios, 3 different strategies, all resulting in improve performance, then that just speaks to it's going to be different for everybody. We can't take one approach and apply it to the entire team and expect everybody to get better. The challenge and support. So this is a chart here that talks about the level of support on the left going up and the level of challenge. And what we want to get to is maximum growth, the level of high challenge and high support. When we're in a low support, low challenge environment, right? Your results are low optimism, low determination, lack of progress. We want to go to high support, high challenge. So continuum of learning, innovation, renewal, development, and growth. And this environment is ideal because when you are supported, so high support, you feel safe to take on the necessary risks to grow. And you have the confidence to take on the obstacles to your development. Right? And when you're being challenged appropriately, it forces the preparation and the necessary work ethic required to get better and to be successful. And it's really both. And it's a fine line. And sometimes you're not always hitting it quite right, but that's where we want to be. High support, high challenge. And it feels good to improve. And individuals who have a coach that they feel can help them get better, that in turn will feed their the chemistry between coach and player, and will feed their growth. And players want to be held accountable. They want to be challenged, right? I think we all do. We also want to be supported, right? So it's both, and that's what we're after. The last thing here in terms of the framework is to think about coach's guide. So the word coach actually comes from the word Koch from a town in Hungary, a small Hungarian village that's known for building horse-drawn carts to transport people from Budapest to Vienna. And these carts were called kochi. And the word coach comes from this word. And the kochi was designed literally to take people from where they are to where they're going. So to guide them, to transport them from where they are to where they want to be. And that is, I think, a terrific metaphor for coaching. And that's what we're trying to do. All right, we want to take people on a journey from where they are to where they want to be. And it requires looking at this relationship of coaching. Is not something that you do to somebody. We don't do this to them, right? They have to actually let us in. The player has to let us into this behavior changing relationship, and they have to freely choose to do that. And so it's really a partnership, and it's player and coach together against the obstacle, right? And I think sometimes you can get in a situation where it feels like the coach and players are separate. And really, we want to bring them together and build this chemistry and this relationship, partnership working together. So with that in mind, there's a process that we go through to build a player development plan, the personalized player development plan. The first step is to have an honest assessment of where are you now as a player, right? Like where are your strengths, where can you improve, all these sort of things, and be very critically honest. And it requires self-awareness and self-reflection on the part of the player, and evaluation from the coaches and people that are in this relationship. You also want to go to the far end and set your goals and your dreams. And it should be audacious. Like it should be something that if you gave it everything you had, what could you accomplish? What are your goals? So now you are very clear about where you are, where you want to be, and then there's a gap in between where you are and where you want to go. Right? Now we want to confront that gap. We want to shrink it. Right? We want to close the gap. And that is the process that we go through. So when we are assessing a player, we're looking at this sort of holistic view of it, right? First part is looking at player health, like we talked about, and the player's physical, mental, emotional, social well-being is number one. The rest of this can't work if we don't address and have our athletes in a good state of mind and a good state of body, and all these things. That's the first step of this thing. And then we want to look at physical, right? So strength, conditioning, endurance, injuries, all those things. That's what we want to evaluate where we are there. There's going to be strengths and there's going to be opportunities to improve. And we want to have a clear picture of what that is. Same thing's true for the psychological aspect. So how do you mentally prepare for games and practices? Is there a reflection? Is there self-awareness? You know, emotions? How do we deal with confidence, pressure, and all these different aspects? And this, we want to be evaluating where this player is at in this area. Technical is, this is the stuff that we often think about: player development, skating, passing, shooting, the skill development side, which is very important. After all, you have to go out there and perform and execute skills to be a good player. I think sometimes, though, the skill development is confused with player development, where it's not player development. It's just part of player development. It's a very important part, but it's only part. And if we're only looking at the technical aspect of a player, then we're missing out on the holistic nature, and we're missing out on a lot of opportunities to really move the needle for this player. And then the tactical pieces is things like hockey IQ, anticipation, decision-making, positioning, team concepts and systems, and that, you know, how do they fit into those aspects? So now we can really evaluate the player in all these areas, and we can figure out where they're good, where they can improve. And what you find is how interconnected they are. So as you improve one, you improve another one. And a simple example could be, if you improve your game intelligence and you can anticipate and make better decisions, you're more likely to be first on pucks because you know where to go quicker. Then it may appear that you're faster, or you are faster because you're getting there first. So everything is connected here. And although when we try to break it down to explain it, it gets a little more linear, but the fact of the matter is it's not linear. This is a cycle, and everything is connected. And as one improves, other aspects will certainly improve as well. I would also highly recommend that there be a self-assessment involved. We want to build those life and character skills of self-awareness, self-reflection, and so that the athlete themselves begins to take ownership and responsibility for their development and learns the skills of how to do that. And the first step is to be able to critically assess where they are. And we want to look at those 4 areas: technical, tactical, physical, and mental. And you can create your own questionnaires or different ways to have them do this. And I've just given some examples of some questions you can ask them to reflect. You know, so on a technical aspect, name the on-ice skill you most want to improve. So when we ask that, we're getting some information about the player. They're telling us what they want help with, right? So now we can support them and challenge them to get better at it. Rate yourself 1 to 5 in skating, skill, spirit, or whatever your criteria are, how you evaluate a player. This creates conversation, right? So if a player rates themselves 5s across the board in all these areas, and you and your coaching staff don't think that's necessarily true, well, there's a conversation that needs to have. If we want to have an honest evaluation of where we are at now, we have to come to a common ground where the player and coach can agree. Where are we actually at here? The other thing that can happen is, if you're fortunate to have more than one coach, is do it separately, this evaluation of the player as well, and then come together and see what the other coaches think. And now it creates a conversation. Maybe you're missing something about a player, or maybe you're not, or maybe you're on the exact same page. But what it does, just creating that discussion, allows the coaches to become a lot more familiar with the players, and creates a task cohesion on the staff and a chemistry with the player, so that we're on the same page about how we can help this player improve. For the tactical piece, how do you best learn team concepts and systems? This could be important. Maybe this is a player that would like one-on-one meetings. Maybe it's somebody who wants video. Maybe it's somebody who just likes the whiteboard, and like everybody, basically you got to do it to own it. So at some point you got to actually get on the ice and do it before you really know it. So having an understanding of what the player thinks or can help you give you clues to how best to teach. You know, what on-ice habits contribute to success? I love this question for the player, because gives them time to reflect on what do they do, what are their habits on the ice that help them be successful. Because every player has a unique fingerprint of how they play. Two players can be very successful, but they can play the game very differently. So becoming more clear on what you do really well that helps you be good is an important piece of development and self-awareness. So we get to physical. Does anything distinguish you from others? Meaning, is there anything you do physically? Are you really strong? Are you really fast? Are you really big? You know, what is it that helps separate you from others? Or maybe there's nothing. Maybe this is actually an area of challenge for you. And if you're physically underdeveloped or behind your competition, then here's an area that we can improve. We also want to find other areas to help you overcome that, right? In some, whether it be technical, tactical, or mental. And then we get to the mental side. So how do you prepare mentally for games and practices, right? And then, like we mentioned earlier, do you have a challenge in your personal life? So these are just sample questions that I would suggest. I think if you just take some time to think about it, you'll come up with a whole list. And then I think you'd find it really worthwhile to have your athletes take the time to think about these questions, to answer them, share them with you. And you'll find that everybody is moving along together when you do it that way. So ultimately, though, we need an action plan. So we have this honest evaluation, assessment of where we're at. We know where we want to go. We have these goals, these dreams. How are we going to confront that gap? Well, first, let's set a vision, which is essentially your goals and dreams. So here's an example of a real player. Okay, I want to be a leader on the team and play in the NCAA tournament. It's a great vision. So now we have a vision. Well, what's a short-term goal that can help us achieve that vision, this audacious vision of yourself? And this goal is a great one. Learn and develop as much as I can in my first semester so that I can finish the season strong, building momentum into next year. Okay, terrific goal. Okay, so it's consistent and it will move him closer to his vision. And now we want to get right down into the behaviors, right? What do you want to do daily, weekly, when, with who? Like very as specific as possible. And this player has some really good ones. Go to every goalie ice to practice shooting. Review the practice plan in advance and set a goal for each drill. Get proper rest, hydration, and food for each practice to help with preparation. Right, so here we've got technical already with practice shooting. We got some tactical, reviewing practice plans and setting goals and understanding some game IQ and intelligence here. And then we've got physical, right? Proper rest, hydration, and food. So this player unknowingly has hit 3 of the 4. Now stop doing, expressing anger and disappointment when screwing up in a drill, realizing it happened. So this is psychological, right? So now we've hit the 4th, go active. And it's important to think about what to stop doing, because sometimes the fastest route to improvement is to actually stop doing something, right? Like for me, I'd like to lose 10 pounds. Well, I work out, but what I need to stop doing is there's some things I should stop eating. and that would be my quickest route to achieving my goals. So sometimes it's better to avoid stupidity rather than chase brilliance to achieve your results. So having them consider, is there something you should stop doing? And we've had some others, well, I want to stop using my phone so much, or I'm going to limit my screen time on game day or before bed. Things like that are highly relevant. I also think it's important to take the time to consider the obstacles to achieving your goals. Because if you can predict what some of those obstacles are, then you can have a plan for how to avoid them, or how are you going to respond intentionally when you ultimately are faced with that obstacle. I think that is a step that is sometimes overlooked when thinking about goal setting. And finally, the reflection piece, having a plan to reflect regularly on your action plan and revise it and reset some new short-term goals and a follow-up plan as a coach. And sometimes this is an area that's really challenging. You put in all this effort to create these plans with your players, you sit down and you get it going, and then follow through becomes difficult because we run out of time, or it feels like we're running out of time. So it really has to be a priority, but trying to think ahead of how can you manage this, follow up and follow through along the course of a season so that it doesn't fall through the cracks. It's an important piece. So my last sort of point on this topic is, if we're talking about holistic development, we're talking about human being. So it's important to understand the human motivation. There's a theory of human motivation, self-determination theory. It really talks about how for a person to be really motivated, three conditions need to be met: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Right. So autonomy is the feeling of having choice. Right. You're choosing. You have some say, some ownership over the behaviors and what's going on in your life, and you have the freedom to tackle obstacles and problem solve, do these things and learn on your own a little bit, right? Competence. So the feeling that you can get better, you have the tools to get better, and you have a plan to get better, gives you that confidence that you will have that path to mastery. And relatedness. So the connections to your coaches, your teammates, your organization, the connections to others. This is like team chemistry and feeling like you're a part of something bigger than yourself. These are three conditions that if you can meet those in your environment for your athletes, they will be motivated. And this stuff makes sense to everybody, whether you could be in the workforce, you can think about this too. You know, if you're in a situation where you're given autonomy to do your job, you're not being micromanaged by your boss, you feel like you're good at what you're doing, and there's a plan that you can develop and move up within the company, and you feel connected to your boss and your coworkers and your company at whole you believe in. Like if those conditions are all being met, you are motivated, right? You're feeling good about what you're doing. Well, when you take time to create a holistic player development plan and it's individualized for the person, you're hitting on these, right? So autonomy, you're giving them choice, taking responsibility for their own development. When they self-assess themselves and they set their own goals, they are taking charge. They're taking ownership of what they're doing. And so they're feeling a sense of autonomy. And the plan is building competence, right? They're directly taking action towards meeting their goals. So having a plan gives them that confidence. And then the relatedness, you're developing chemistry between player and coach. Like I said, sometimes player and coach are separate. We want to bring them together. This is the best way, right? Like you're meeting together to help them improve, to help them achieve their goals. So you're connecting this player to the coaching, to the team, to the program, and just spurring on further growth. So this is certainly something that the self-determination theory that I encourage people to look into. This is, again, I really appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts and some things that have worked for me. This is an evolution for me. And if I were to do this conversation a year from now, it would probably look different because it's constantly changing and hopefully getting better. And I hope that I've been able to add some things to your repertoire that you can add to your context and hopefully add to the collective knowledge in this area and ultimately just create better experiences for the people that we coach. So I'm going to stop my share, but my information is on the screen. Feel free to engage with me in any way. Happy to continue this conversation with people offline or online in a different medium or whatever, but I appreciate everyone's time and thank you for taking the time to support Hockey Without Borders and what they're doing, and to also taking time out of your day to try and improve what you're doing. So thanks for that. John, I guess I'll stop my share and let you take it away here.
All good. Thank you, man. Great talks. I have a great talk. I have a few questions on my own, but we have one from the audience here. I don't know if you can see it. It reads, a great talk. How do you keep track of all the development plans for all your players? Do you have some player cards with some of the information? How do you do it?
Yeah, so we use Google Sheets. So we'll have a Google Sheet that is shared with the coaches and the player. And on there would be a series, like I shared some little sample questions where there's more thorough reflection pieces in there and other evaluations that are in there, different tabs. And then there's one big tab, which is like you're saying, like a player card. It sort of pulls the most important pieces and distills the whole thing down into that action plan that I shared. So although we have a bigger body of knowledge and information on the player, what we want the coaches and the player to be thinking about every day is really just that action plan.
Right, of course. I'm curious about, I wrote down a couple questions. Because I feel like what you're talking about, a holistic way of coaching, is a kind of a new era or a newish way of, when do you think that switch came about, and is there a why to that? Like, is it an evolution? Is it a certain generation that want to know why, asking more questions, wanting more communicate? What are your views? What do you think about it?
I think it's the future, but it's also now. And I think that modern coaching is this, and that the coaches and organizations that figure this out will have a competitive advantage. And really, I mean, I just think it's like, how do you want to be coached? How do you want to be treated? Like, you want to be treated as a person, as an individual, with respect, and it being an environment where you feel you can get better. So I think as the culture of coaching in hockey is changing, when or how or why, I'm not really sure. I think so. I'm 38 years old. When I think my era of player was sort of the tail end of, like, really some of that more old school approach to things, and we started to, I think, resist it. And
I agree, completely agree. I'm in the same boat as you.
Yeah. So now here I am at 38. Okay. Well, now I'm coaching.
Yeah.
So I'm more receptive, I think, and ready to coach in this way. This is maybe just entirely personal. I don't know if there's any trend of this beyond myself, but but not everybody's there. But I think we're at a point where people recognize that this is the right thing, the right way to do it. We've got to have more discussions like this where we're all sharing how we're doing
it. Yeah, agreed. Okay, we have a question or comment here. Let me read it in the chat from Freddie. How are college players different now than before when you started? And what is something that players coming in as freshmen do to really prepare best for that jump to college hockey? So I guess two questions there. Like, what's different between the players when you started? Let's start with that one. And now.
Well,
is there one?
Yeah, I think players have more access to information now than ever before. So as a coach, that requires you to be more prepared and have better answers, and they're more willing to ask the questions and want to know why certain decisions were made. I guess I'm thinking about scenarios where maybe a player is unhappy, but they also have more information. They know more. There's more stuff out there, which is good, but then it's also hard too, because there's a lot more influences on a player too. And so that creates some challenges at times. I think that's a change. I know I'm not suggesting Freddie that this is where Freddie's coming from on here, but I know that there is a rhetoric, well, players have changed and not like they used to be and stuff like that. I don't know if I'm in a great place to answer that, because I think I started coaching pretty young in college, and I think I evolved as a coach sort of at the same time that the players were evolving. So it happened sort of organically for me, where I don't necessarily feel like they're any different now, other than I think maybe they're a little more comfortable to ask the questions and to sort of the expectations on coaches are higher. I think that's true. I think the expectations of having a good coach who knows a lot about everything, like every player, lots of players have skills coaches, and they got a sports psych, and then they've got a strength and conditioning coach, and all these different things. And then they get to you, and it's just not fair, honestly, for a coach to be an expert in all of those areas. But there's an expectation that you are. So I think those are some things that I've noticed. It's a great question that I'll reflect on more. And then what can first-year players really do to prepare best for the jump to college hockey? Well, the fact is college hockey is an old league, meaning that you got players every year that are going to be turning 24, 25 years old, and this year 26 years old because COVID has given every player an extra year. So you have 26-year-olds playing college hockey. So there's going to be a physical challenge. Like there's just going to be players that are more physically developed than you are. So that's the first thing. There's not much you can do about that other than be diligent and keep working and let time come up. Let time work on your side, and you'll catch up. But I think for the most part, when you go up levels, if you're skilled enough to move up a level, your skill level is probably good enough to play at that level. It's just the game is played faster, and it's guys are stronger, and so it's just an adjustment period there. And so it's just, I think it's sort of a cookie. I think every player would be different. Like what does one person need to do to be more prepared than another? It's going to be different based on the person.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, I had maybe one last question because you spoke talking about the holistic, and you touched base on it on the answer, talking about how players have skills coach, mental coach, and all that. Do you think like organizations, association teams should have like resources as like a mental performance coach, or like we have two on the conference during the conference? And we as an organization, we really think mental health is super important. Like, how do you view it? Like, is it the player's job? Is it the team's job to have a resource like that?
I think it depends on level. Resources, can you actually provide that? And if you can, then yes, I believe you should. And I think that at our level definitely should. I mean, listen, a lot of this, quite frankly, a lot of stuff that I've learned along the way comes from people in that realm, right? Like sports psychologists and behavioral scientists and people that I've been fortunate enough to have friendships with that I've learned a lot from. And I think when you look at it this way, what really separates a coach's ability to teach skills, tactics over another coach? I mean, yeah, maybe you're a little bit better or worse than somebody else, but I don't think that's where the gains are coming. I don't think it's coming to strength and conditioning either. Like, yeah, we can be better and more fit and stronger, but how much better is your strength program than the other team's strength program? I don't know how much of a competitive advantage it is there. I think where the competitive advantage is on the mental side and the mental skills. And if you can, help your athletes deal with pressure and confidence and mental skills. So the mental performance side is a huge competitive advantage. And also, and if you as a coach know how to frame things and build a message for your team and individuals, that really helps. But then also, like you're saying, on the mental wellness side, I think is also really important, because if there's challenges there, it's going to be difficult to be good at anything else. Yeah,
accessibility is key. Yeah. All right, I guess that concludes our talk, our little chat. Thank you so much, TJ. I appreciate it, and hopefully we'll get to collaborate in the future.
Hope so too, John. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good day.
See ya.